Look good. Look good.
Thank you.
I feel like every time I see you, I'm like, oh wow, you look buffer. But I don't think you were.
I'm just getting fatter. That's it.
Is that it? Is it?
That might just be it.
Ah,
Yeah.
well, you fill out well, man. You fill out well.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, just a little kind of background for us. We met through music.
Yes, sir.
In a very remote way. Like you, Monty, our mutual friend, he sent you one of my records, and then you sang on it. And who knows where that's gonna be? I don't know. I'm not.
Right.
I don't know where that's going. But sent the record. You had this insane operatic voice that like my mom listened to a lot of show tune stuff like Les Miserables and all that type of stuff, and it really struck a chord with me. Really beautiful lyrics. It was operatic. I just, that term keeps coming to mind, but you blew me away, man. And that was 2016, and so
Yeah, that really was 2016. Wow.
yeah, and then we met in person in 2017.
Yep, beginning of the year.
Yep, in shoot,
In,
the
in Selection HQ.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep, that's right. Oh my gosh. And then you at the time you're doing like the what was it, the pseudo NPR tiny desk thing, right? With the red sweatshirt.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what. That was the NPR Tiny Desk competition, the contest. So
That's right.
They were basically, like having people submit videos. So that was our submission. We I had the tiny desk from the selection office. We wore red jumpsuits. It's just to stand out, just to throw people off. You know what I'm saying? 'Cause it was like, what? Why red? Why jumpsuits?
I remember
just
that.
because.
So distinctly. And I think you were doing like rehearsals there, or you were filming
Yeah.
the thing. Yeah. But
Both.
yeah. That was my first time meeting you was very very interesting. Like you're a very quirky dude, I would say. And I really
I
like
am.
that. I mean that in the most like in the best way. Like I think your music kind of reflects that in a certain way, like the diversity of it and how kind of so many different directions you can go, and like how well your ear is in terms of timing, and you can pretty much be you on any beat that's given, any type of direction. So love it.
Thank you. It's funny that you mentioned that because the first time we met was in the midst of a massive celebration. I can't remember what was going on exactly. It was something selection related, but as you know, everybody was there. They were just having the event at the HQ. And the first time we met, I was like, I don't know this person, but you were just somewhat tipsy and extraordinarily happy. and that stuck out to me because it was a unique thing to see somebody who was somewhat drunk and very happy to see me. And I was like, who is this person?
That's right.
And I was like, oh my God, this is Matt. What? So for me, I was just ecstatic. I was like, I've never met somebody this enthusiastic to meet me, but I already like this person. And then I realized it was you. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, not just a creepy. Yeah, man, that's back when man, happiness and people could hug each other and yeah, miss those times. Miss those times. Oh my goodness. That's right. I do remember being a little tipsy meeting you too, and that which made the experience for me a lot better too. Man, and I do remember that because I think that was the first time a lot of folks were meeting you actually, right, in person.
First time I met Jasmine. First time I met you. First time I met pretty much anybody in LA.
Right. So interesting. And there is like, what was that like for you coming into LA with that type of energy? Because it's not always like that, like there's like that fresh first introduction, which I feel like is unique.
Oh gosh, it was so interesting because when I came there, it was January 2017, at the time, I was staying with another music friend, actually another music friend's house. And so there were like 4 or 5 of us just piled up in this house, this like 2 bedroom house. So like there's like 2 couches, and it was the bachelorest of bachelor pads. And so there was this kind of, oh no, actually that was the next year. I'm sorry. When I went the first time, I was actually staying at my friend Veda's house. So in the video, one of the girl with the jumpsuit, I was staying at her house, and at the same time, Oshi as well was Joshua, his name, but Oshi was also staying there at the same time. He came to visit, so we were all kind of in the same space. It was me, Martin, Veda, and Oshi. And I was meeting so many new people for the first time. I was just like, these are people that I've always had a name for, but never a face. Especially coming out of the SoundCloud era. And I was like, these are people I genuinely am a fan of, and I'm like, I have no idea what their personality is like. And seeing Oshi and Veda for the first time, I was just like, these are just people. Like, these are just my people. Like, they're just chill. He was just like a young little bro. And like, I'll never forget information. Like, I felt glad that I could help cheer him up a bit, because at the time he was feeling a little down. Josh was a little bit down about his music, but he was like, I was like, bro, like I was listening to some draft I was doing, and I was just really feeling it. I was like, I don't even care. Like, this joint is trash, but like, this is fire, dog. He's like, why are you so happy about it? I'm like, if you can't love what you do, how is somebody else gonna love it? Like, it stuck with him so much so that he took the time to revamp his whole sound, and then he started doing vocals, and I was like, oh, okay, cool, glad I could help.
Nice.
So
Nice.
yeah.
So you're a therapist. You get paid?
I wish. The amount of times my presence has therapized, indirectly or directly.
No, that's
If
right.
if I had a penny for every time I met somebody with trauma, no.
You have $10. $10.
You know?
What? So you're coming from? That was your first time in LA, or was that Yeah. Where were you coming from before? From then?
I think that in 2017, the beginning of the year 2017, was my first time coming into LA ever. I remember because I had to get like check off like LA staples. I was like, I gotta go to Roscoe's. I gotta go to what's the the uh the one fry spot, the burger spot.
In and out.
In and Out. I was like, I gotta do
Oh,
In and Out. I gotta do Roscoe's. I gotta do the Hollywood
checklist.
Strip. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. I was like, I gotta get the LA staples in, and then and then I was just slowly but surely, disillusioned with the
Right.
city, because somebody took us around. He was just like,
Dirty
here it
ass
is.
city.
And it's just like homeless people like going, and that's so sad. And I was like, oh, this, like, there are like homeless people like lying on the strip, and I'm like, there's like somebody sleeping on Tom Hanks's name. I was like, damn, okay, this is not what I thought it was gonna be.
Right. And that is not
You know?
Wilson.
Right.
And okay, let's go. I wanna kind of talk. I have a couple things that I wanna just touch on because they're super interesting to me. I mean, we touched on you are an insane musician. People don't know. I wish people knew more how nasty you are on drums. Um, talk about that a little bit.
So it's mostly due to my own fault, honestly. But I started before anything else as a drummer, like from 2 years old until I learned how to properly play a drum kit at 9 at my dad's friend's house. My dad's a drummer, but actually my dad's friend was also a drummer, so I didn't actually start learning until I went to my dad's friend's house. But from that point, I was kind of just hooked. Like from 9 until 20. Well, at the time I was 9, that was what, 2003. From 2003 to 2015, my life was drumming, like entirely drumming, nothing else. And then at some point during like 2012, I started getting some interest in production. Actually, 2008, I started gaining interest in production because I've always like admired Timbaland and Pharrell and Adult Swim bumps specifically. Like I would be up at like 3 or 4 in the morning, and then I would just wake up randomly and I would hear the Adult Swim like bumps going. I was like, who's making this? I don't know what this is. Later, I found out it was Flying Lotus. But at the time, I was just like, this is just Adult Swim music. Like, this is fire. I don't know what that is. And, it inspired and influenced my drumming style quite a bit, too. So from that point, everything that I did revolved around drumming. And singing was not an option. Like it just wasn't. Like my mom and dad were both singers. I just didn't want to put myself into that kind of scrutiny. But I was like, no, not doing it. Sorry. I was like, even if I can, not for me. So, roll around to 2014, 2015, I'm doing the drummer thing. I'm, just kind of doing gigs here and there, playing in various bands, doing various events. In school, I'm like in the jazz band, doing that kind of stuff. And then I applied for Berkeley, did the audition, got partial scholarship. Like I was like, that was my track for like that was the majority of my life. And then when I when I found out how much I would still owe after the partial scholarship and financial aid, looking at the 4-year plan, I was like, I'm not gonna put myself $200K in debt to drum when I could just do this now. So I was like, well, okay, guess we just got to do it, And more so than just drums, I was like, I was really getting into the production space, so I started incorporating more of the production into my drumming. And I initially had them completely separate. It was going to be like NAJI Adamson, the drummer, even though Adamson is not actually my last name. It's just a portmanteau that I just made up. I was like, okay, NAJI Adamson, the drummer. And then at the time, my production name was Amex, which is everybody gets a first, shitty name. So that was my first shitty name. And it was Amex.
Mine was Ho One, believe it or not. But anyway, go on. Yeah.
You're gonna have to break that down for me in a second.
Later, yeah.
So actually, my first production name was AMYE. So I don't know if I remember how I pronounced it. I think it was Amy, and I was just like, all right. And then it turned into MX, right? But MX with a Y, because it stood for ahead of my year's experience. So I was like, okay, instead of E for experience, we're gonna put an X, ahead of my year's experience. Oh my God, it's mind blowing. I was inspired by Nerd. You know what I mean? Again, I was on the Pharrell tip. I was like, nobody ever really dies. How deep is that? All right, I'm ahead of my year's experience. That's me, right? So that was my production stuff. And at that time, I was coming off of the Berkeley thing. I'd actually decided to take a year off of school because I was in college for a year, and then I was going to transfer to Berkeley, and then just decided to leave because I never finished college. So instead of just kind of figuring out what it is, I was just like, all right, I'm going to go take a year off. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to just take this year off. Went to live in New York with my dad for like 3 months, and then found an internship with a producer out there who was working out of he was by day he was an advertising agency music director, and then by night they let him use the mailroom as his studio, so he would just be hustling out of there and had like a whole mini studio out of this mailroom in the Reuters building, which is a pretty historic building. So I kind of cut my teeth in the mailroom, so to speak, technically. But it was at that time that was the first time that I'd actually gotten to record something. Like I'd never pressed record on vocals properly, or recording somebody else for that matter. Like I've recorded things, but I was like, I had no idea what it was doing. I was just like, I don't know what this is. But that was the first time I was in a quote unquote studio setting and started recording things. And I was like, oh, this is fantastic. So then I started incorporating more of that. And my uncle also is a producer, composer, et cetera, et cetera. And we used to own a large 2-family estate in the middle of Brooklyn, right? It was like a $3 million house. And he ran the studio out of the basement. Like they renovated the entire thing. They took the equity out of the house and just built the whole thing back from the ground up. So at that time, for like a good 3-4 years, there was a whole studio fully like studio, not studio,
not a mail
in
room.
the basement.
Yeah,
not a mailroom. Like it was a studio, and it had like 2 drum kits, my dad's drum kits. It had the whole control room, everything. So I would be drumming like crazy 24/7 during the day, going to summer camp, or not even camp. It's like the Boys Club of New York, which is like kind of like it was just a 50 cent a summer daycare for preteen boys. And it worked. My dad would go to work, I would go to the boys club, and crazily enough, for 50 cents, like I kid you not, they literally like, all right, here, pay 50 cents, you're good. And at that camp, or at that place, the building, they had a bunch of teachers, music teachers. They had production teachers. They had saxophone teachers, drum teachers, piano teachers, guitar teachers, gyms. Like this was a whole decked out thing. Like I don't know. I guess they got funding from the state, but it was an enormous, enormous thing. So I started learning how to drum or like how to read sheet music from the drum teacher there, and then just started really, really getting more and more involved in the drumming side of that and the production side of that. And I started dabbling around, like I said, that was like 2008, 2009. And then fast forward, after this point, I've been inundated by my uncle, who's been, just constantly in the studio, learning from him. I've been drumming like crazy, crazy. And then we fast forward back to 2014. Like I'm like getting ready to go to Berkeley, and then I decide to quit. And I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna do this drumming thing, right? And at that point, during the time that I was in New York, and then I came back, I just came back to Erie. I was actually gonna go off to China for a year and just be a nanny, like a in-home nanny. and I was like, I just want to go. This is my year off. I was like, I just want to go to Asia. I don't know, but the process for that was weird, like super, super weird. Like there was a screening process for the families and myself, and they passed me through the screening process, but then the families had to screen me, to figure out if they want to be in their home. So like one of the families, for example, was like, okay, let's set it up. We want to, set up a video call. And then they were like, oh, I was like, okay, cool. And like, but you can't see our faces. And I was like, what do you, wait, pause. You mean to tell me you expect me to go across the continent, across the Pacific Ocean, into a country I've never been to, with a language I don't know, take care of a child I've never seen, and not see your faces, not have any way of knowing how to identify you?
I feel like you would be down for that type of crazy.
I have limits to my insanity.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm wild, but I'm not that wild. Like I do not want to get kidnapped. Right. So there was just little things like that. So I was like, okay, let's try another family. And another family, was like all of them were like heavy smokers, like everybody. Like there was always just something weird about the families that I would be interviewed with. I was just like,
is that something common, like having a foreigner be a babysitter?
Well, it depends. So a lot in the Asian countries specifically, you'll have a lot of au pair programs, which are the nanny programs, or like in-home tutors, or you'll have English teachers. A lot of people go overseas to study, to teach English, because if you have a degree, you can. Everybody over here is looking for English teachers because everybody's trying to learn English as a second language. So there's a huge market that's almost cornered by foreigners, which is just the English learning and in-home care market over here. But since I don't have a degree, I couldn't do the English teaching. So I was like, well, I can watch your babies, So, that. And even though that sounds strange, I did have a small background in baby care and like daycare and things like that. Like I used to kind of manage children for an old church group, like when there would be like service or things like that. And so I was like, okay, at least I'm familiar with the concept. So I was like, why not? We'll see. But then it got weird, and I canceled it.
Yeah.
And then I came back to Erie.
If you were my you would trip me out if I was a kid, to be honest. I'll be like, damn, you're a cartoon, kind of.
Yeah.
Like you're very expressive, exaggerative. You would trip me the fuck out.
Yeah,
I would love it.
It was kind of a it was a bonus. It was a superpower in the realm of kids, because it's a lot easier to get kids excited than it is adults.
Right.
So I really resonated with younger kids or super old. Like either everybody's super younger or everybody's much older than me. So
that's interesting. Is it is it because you feel like they get you more than people that are in the middle ground?
Well, it's interesting. It's a combination of my trauma allowed me to bond quicker with older people because I aged quicker. But me being the person that I am, I resonated with people who still had that internal youth. So I was like, I could see both sides, and I felt both sides equally simultaneously. I was basically 18 by the time I turned 7. You go through a lot. That's gonna happen. So at the point in time that I was looking into going back home, I was like, I don't really know what I'm gonna do yet. I just want to do music, I guess. and I want to do it full time, and I don't want to go to school for this. So
What
came
was
back
the
home.
what was the turning point for you for that? Like,
The turning point for me for that was more so I just wanted to give myself some rigidity and like some sort of direction because for the first few months that I came back home, I had no job, so I was just selling off whatever I could in my basement. And I actually started this pretty decent eBay run for a while. Like I started building up a store. It was great. I was just like, okay, I can do this. But then I just ran out of things to sell. So I stopped that. And I needed a bed to sleep on. So I was like, I can't sell this, but all right. So after that, I kind of just picked up odd end jobs, like and tried to make them related to music. So I started working at like in live sound and just kind of being the cable wrangling guy and helping set up power and things like that. And then I picked up a job as I was a waiter for an old folks home. So I was waiting on old people, and it was a great thing actually. Like it was, I've had a lot of random customer service jobs, and it's afforded me a lot of patience. Like, yeah,
right.
I mean, you can imagine like being on a customer service call for technology, like some 70, 80-year-old guy trying or lady trying to set up their TV, right? Their brand new Samsung Smart TV, and they're like, why is it in Spanish? And I'm like, okay,
They're like
today is
angry.
gonna be one of those days, you know. What I mean?
No, I feel like that skill, the customer service element to someone's upbringing is so crucial. There's so many lessons in that industry. I think there's like a common kind of thing that I've heard of like you know if I were to own my own business, that would be like a requirement. Just having that experience to interact with people in a selfless, like you kind of have to be selfless in that industry, you know, and it
Yes,
translates
yes.
across everything how you act. And the sooner you do it, the more you kind of get those soft skills, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it also, like I said, it builds your patience bone, I guess. Because for me, had I not done, I would have a very very short short
Fuse.
tolerance for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But the one thing that I'm grateful for is that I do have a lot of patience for a lot of things. People are like, why are you so like even with everybody? Like I said, it translates to pretty much everything. But as a result, like with everything, it kind of I allow myself more time and gave people more lenience as far as like me trying to progress anywhere or me trying to get a job or something like that. So after I went through all those miscellaneous item jobs, still drumming, still doing my thing, but didn't really have any.
Drumming is like a hobby at this point. It's not something
Right, it's
you're
not professionally. I want it to be professional, but I'm like, I'm
like
just coming off of
in your mind.
leaving college.
What would be your successful drumming career? Like, would it be for a band or you? Yeah.
Yeah, at the time, it would have been to be session drumming, like studio session drumming, being part of one or two, maybe three bands, and just touring. And that was the ideal goal for me to be in several bands and be in studios and just be working in that way. Not sure what the revenue models were for that. I was just like, this kind of makes sense. This is what I've grown up seeing my dad do. This is what I've seen like what the normal revenue stream is for a musician. Like I don't even know how to make money from music. I don't even know how to get my music in a store. Like I don't even know what that means. Like how does that happen? Right? At that time, I was just like, I'm just gonna play stuff. So I spent all my time trying to make it professional. When I was in New York, when I was back home, I was just drumming and trying to be in spaces. But the thing about Erie is that it's a very, very strange town, and in that it's stuck in the 70s in mentality and in physicality. Like it is, like it's part of the Bible Belt of America. So or not the Bible Belt, sorry, the Rust Belt of America. And it basically there was a bunch of construction and manufacturing plants and companies that were built in like the Pittsburgh, Ohio, Cleveland, Buffalo, Erie area that all went out of business during the 70s. So the town kind of stopped in time at that point when I moved there. And so you have the people that grew up in that space coming off of manufacturing jobs and then not having them and kind of growing up poor. and that whole mentality kind of clouding and shrouding over the entirety of the city is a very, very weird space. But in that space, there was a unique little divot for me to come in and be like, hey, I'm Nazi. I do weird stuff and I drum. And so, I was grateful for it because I was blessed enough to have some skill, and it showed that nobody else in that town had that, and it afforded me the ability to just walk in a room and be like, "Hey, let me play something," and they're like, "You're hired," So, that was I was grateful that I had the time to actually study enough, by myself, because when I was going to high school, and this is like 2011 or 2010 to 2012 in high school. I actually, because we moved here, or we moved there in 2010, and for the first 6 months I was homeless, like no house. We randomly met some woman who let us stay at her. I don't know if I should give her name or not, but we met some woman who let us stay in her basement along with another military brat girl. And after that, we moved out of there into a shelter, and then we went into like another shelter. And then, so while I was doing that, the woman who let us move into her basement, let us use her address for the school so we could get over we could kind of escape or skip past the whole gerrymandering thing and skip past the laws of you have to go to school in your district, right? Because the schools in the district that I was in, or that we were living in the shelter, is just the dankest of rawest of roughest schools, of the district. It was the disenfranchised. It was all the minority communities, and that doesn't inherently make it bad. It's all the poor and all the poverty stuck in one place, and all that frustration that makes it dangerous and frustrating to actually get anything done. So that was where we were geographically located and where I would be required to go to school had I listed my address as like the shelter or something. So in order to get past that, we had to use that woman's address, which she let us use her address, thankfully, And so I attended the school in that case, and the school was aware of my homelessness state, but they didn't know what they could do. Like as soon as we found a house, I think like 3 or 4 months after attending the school, we finally found a house, but it was also outside of the school district. So I would have to leave. Like I spent like 3 months there just building up and getting excited. And they're like, well, you're gonna have to leave if you change districts. And I was like, well, what do I do? So as I was like, I don't really know. I was just kind of resigned to having to move out because I'd also, before moving to Erie, I'd been homeschooled from 4th to 9th grade. So I was already used to kind of doing self-study and things like that. So I was like, I guess we'll just go back to that. But as
Whoa,
I was
man. Yeah, just real quick, like how who was it in your family that and also God bless the lady that let y'all in, because
right.
wow, how many of there were you that lived in her basement?
It was in total 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us.
Wow.
So 5 of us in the basement, and it's just a rough, cement basement, so it's nothing crazy. But it's just us in there, and then she was upstairs with her dog and her son. So it was two upstairs, and then 5 of us downstairs in the basement. And so, what was the question you asked before that? Was that the other question?
No, that was it. That was it. I was just curious, 'cause um, yeah, because that's like a really amazing thing for the lady to do.
Yeah,
Like,
I am absolutely grateful for that. There were many random acts of kindness that occurred in my time there. So remembering that, because I've had we've been homeless in several instances during my time there. Like I was there for 10 years, and I've moved a collective 8 or 9 times in that city. like,
in
like
Erie,
it,
Pennsylvania.
in Erie, Pennsylvania. So because I lived there from 2010 to 2021. So that's 11 years. And in that time, I've moved around 8 times, probably 9, honestly. But between various people's couches, or somebody letting me stay at their home, or finding a new spot, is a very tumultuous, tumultuous time.
Yeah, and that also gives you like I feel like that builds your level of like respect that you can share to people, like knowing that things are finite, I guess. you know, like
I mean,
not
it
attaching
is.
yourself to things.
That I think is the most important thing that I took away, because I've had to lose my things so many times or get rid of them or just start over from scratch again and again and again. It's not that I became detached from everything, but I just became more grateful for what I did have, and it allowed me to gain a greater sense of minimalism. Like, what do I need to be happy? And that's surprisingly, well, at the time, surprisingly very little, right? I was like, oh, okay, like I know how to procure joy in pretty much any circumstance because I've seen my lowest lows and I'm still happy here. Okay, got it. So it helped kind of develop that sense of self reliability and self generated joy, out of whatever kind of situation I was in. 'Cause I've been in a lot of dark situations, so kind of having it was almost a necessity in order to just keep going, like I've never, I, I think in total, I've collectively had the impulse to kill myself like 2 times in my life, right? And one of those times was actually like last year during the pandemic, right? At that time, it was dramatic. But before that, I
I
think the
want to
only
talk.
other,
I want to talk about that one though, real quick,
yeah,
because
yeah,
and sorry to cut you off, but
no, no,
I do. I wanted to talk about that Twitter rant that you did, and I'm curious if that was around the same time because when I read through that, I was trying to pull it up before this, but couldn't dig deep enough, and but there was a I don't even rant seems like a negative term, but like there's a
no,
Twitter thread that you posted that was very 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 vulnerable, in terms of how you felt about going off of Mona Lisa, like a really hugely successful song with Monty Booker, um, and I'm curious, was that around that time frame?
no, actually, no, it wasn't around that time at all. It was actually around the time of, I want to say, begin or middle of 2020.
Oh, okay, okay.
Um,
Because that was
Middle
last
of
year.
20.
I
Yeah,
feel like,
yeah,
yeah. Okay.
yeah. The middle of 2020, because at that time, no prospect of a job. The COVID's happening. I'm kind of quarantined. At the time, I think government unemployment was just about to run out. And thankfully, I had a business for the past 5 or 6 years, like an established LLC, and because of that, I could show tax proof of gaining income, et cetera, et cetera. So I was able to take advantage of the government unemployment system for self-employed residents. So that was getting ready to run out. I didn't really have any foreseeable prospects of a job, right? I had to figure out somehow how to make it to Korea, right? Or how to not, like, I didn't even know what was going on. Like my music, I'm like, I don't even know if I should still be doing this, if it makes sense. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know my why. Like, why am I here? And it wasn't a fatalistic sense. It was more just like, if I have no actual benefit to being here, or if nobody is benefiting from me being here, am I causing more harm? Like should I be here? Like not so much like I need to die, but it was like, does this actually make sense? Like, is it worth it for me to still be here? Am I causing more harm than good? And just that kind of thought process is like, hmm, so that at that point, I had to kind of just had to start from scratch and detach myself from Najee the musician and just reconnect with who Najee the person was and what music meant to me, right? And what creativity meant to me in that regard. But so that was the second and only time I've actually, and I've gone through a lot of shit, like a lot of shit. But for
Yeah, I
some
mean, you're
reason,
saying since like 7 years old, you said, right?
yeah,
That's
it's been
a lot of trauma. Like we don't gotta go like super super deep into that stuff, but it's really interesting because you are one of the sweetest people I've ever met and the most kind and like understanding, and like it does take a little bit of it makes sense. It makes sense. Like it makes sense that you are the way you are now. And it's a scary thing to think about that there's so much more time left too to
right.
live, and knowing that there's ebbs and flows. So I'm curious too, like what kind of helped you shake that feeling?
For me, it was just restoring my why, right? For anybody, I think like the if you approach it at the most logical level, there's always gonna be emotion involved, but at the most logical level, for me, my why was missing. It was like, why am I doing this? Why am I going in this direction? Why am I the way I am? Like, and just really, really stuck to answering those questions for myself and not just being like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, because you could easily just be like, I don't know. Oh, well, nothing matters. But, it was like, at this point in my life, I don't want to. I want to keep finding those answers. I'm still in the pursuit of knowledge of myself. My greatest mission in this life is to know myself, right? And that is something that I've stuck with, not because of any ulterior motive or any like narcissist tendency. I'm just genuinely curious about how I work and how I translate to other people, and going through what I've gone through, how I'm at where I'm at now. So I was like, how does my mind work? How do I work? How do I navigate the world? What tools will I have? What tools do I have now to function, to be able to raise kids? Like, if I want to be the father, if I want to be the husband, if I want to be et cetera, et cetera, how do I get to that point from where I'm at now, right? And where does that why come from? And it's not just why do I want to be a father? It's not just why. It's like, why do I have this much to give? How do I have this much to give? And why do I want to give this to other people? And why do I want to give this energy out and not keep it for myself? Right. And it's just going through those whys for myself. For many people, going through those whys can actually make it a lot worse. So it's not like a recommendation that I give people, but it's something I tend to resolve things by myself very efficiently by just asking questions. Many people do not like to ask questions because they fear the answer, but I don't fear the answer, right? That for me, the biggest thing is just going into the space and being okay with whatever answer comes. Like I genuinely appreciate and value any information, good or bad. But I value that because that gives me insight into what to do about it or what not to do about it, right? And who I am or who I'm not. So for me, coming out of that space was just asking myself why, right? Not who I like, who's gonna love me, or but it's like what do I want? Who am I? What do I want out of this life? Why am I doing this? And what does that have to look like on the output, or what do I want it to look like on the output? Like, how do I want to express this feeling or this emotion? Does it have to go through music? Does it have to go through something else? Does it have to, you know, do I want it to go through any of those things? Do I still want to do this? And it's just like you're finding in that process, it's like, yeah, I still want to do this. Yes, I still feel this way. Yes, I still feel that. Right. And just giving myself that perspective allowed me to kind of come out of a dark space, saying like everything is done, or I don't know what. It's like, oh, well, I know this thing. All right. And if I know this thing, then I can work on figuring out the next thing, and I can figure out the next thing.
That's beautiful, man. That's really well put. And I think I do agree. I think that type of thinking is not for everybody, but
right.
I do think that is like helpful, and I can see how that can be very helpful too. I think I feel like when I first moved to LA, I had my first bout with depression, and it kind of just, I was never the same after my staring it in the face for the first time. And it was never like a suicidal thing or anything, but just like when you were talking about like seeing me for the first time and being happy, like I feel like that was an old version of myself to some extent. And yeah, I think people obviously handle those ebbs and flows differently, but you came out of it, and I feel like there's an element, like, it's so interesting hearing all this background. Like, I've known you for that amount of time, since 2016, and
right.
kind of like now knowing that and hearing your music, I kind of will hear it a little different now. And
right. Like, oh.
Yeah. And after like working with you, we've collaborated on many things, and like there's a perfectionist element to you that is so beautiful to watch, because we'll do vocal tracking and there will literally be like take 110 on 3 lines, and
Hey, you know.
you you do it till it's just right, and it kind of aligns with what you're saying, like really figuring, I don't know, to me it's parallel a little bit, like that mentality of how you got out of that dark spot and how you look at music and treat music and create it. And yeah, it's really interesting. I wanted to touch on that Twitter thing in particular, and I don't know if you have, I didn't memorize it by any means, but I remember reading the whole thing, and I thought it was like a very vulnerable thing. And as someone who is creating music and who frankly feels the same as you in just a slightly different capacity, yeah, like can you summarize that for whoever's listening?
Yes. So basically, I posted a thread of tweets, kind of chronicling my journey through my own mentality, but also literally what happened as far as like my whole support on the music tip. So like I had a popular song with a fellow collaborator, Monty Booker, and that song became really really popular. But at the same time, like maybe well, not at the same time, like 3 years after the song came out, 2 or 3 years after the song came out, Spotify went through a major shift in how they operated as far as the people involved, how much it was algorithmically decided. And as a result, it kind of became a massive culling for artists like myself. Many other artists experienced the same thing at the same time. But in particular, to my case, I was coming off of the success of that, and that being probably my most prominent single at the time. Not that I didn't have anything else or that I felt like I couldn't make anything else, but is that was the only one that really connected with people at the time outside of the ones that came before it. So that was the most popular one. And then to see it just suddenly, like harshly, like delete itself, essentially, like I was like, what's going on? And I realized it was because of how DSPs kind of operated pre that moment. Is a very very human based system. It's people who who put you in that playlist for a period of time, or whoever their stockholders are. Like, for example, if you have a song with Sony, right, or a song with a major label, you're guaranteeing yourself a certain amount of DSP support because those companies, Sony, Warner, Universal, have stakes in these DSPs. So Spotify, Apple Music, etc. Like Apple Music, I don't think they have stakes in, but other things like that, Spotify and other similar DSPs. So when you're in certain deals or you have certain situations, in the back end, business back end, you have sort of a guarantee. So Mona Lisa was in this really unique place where I was independent, but Monty at the time was had a publishing deal with Sony. So not only was he already doing his thing as a musician, but he kind of had like a back end guarantee with him being involved with Sony. And on top of that, the song just kind of took on a life of its own, and people just genuinely kept playing it. But the biggest thing that really helped bolster that was the playlisting support, and the continual playlisting support. Like, it just kept getting put at the top of playlists again in the end, because again, Sony and the people involved were like, well, this is an investment, so we're going to make sure we get return on our investment. So once that changed, and once things went far more algorithmic, and once it passed a certain amount of time, again, at the time the song was already like 3 years old. But at the time as well, it was at its highest listening rate ever. Like I was averaging like 1 million listens a month or something like that. Like outside of the initial boost, because I remember the first week it was like 1 million listens per week, and I was like, good God.
Wow.
But yeah, so like it was.
What's it at now? Do you know?
I think it was. Let me check. The last time I checked, I think it's like 100,000 something per month, right? So it went from 1 million something a week to 100,000 a month. right? In the span of how long has it been now? 6 years, right? Which is
It's got
fine.
yeah, almost 30 million streams
Right,
total
you
now.
know, so it's done its thing, and I'm grateful for absolutely every stream that's come out of it. But as a result, you know, I kind of had to go through a metamorphosis because the attachment that I had to that song and the dependency that I had on that song financially, emotionally, you know, like career wise, was so strong that I was like, once that came down, it almost directly tied to my feeling of worth in the industry, not my self worth. Like I wasn't like, oh, this song is going down, I'm a piece of shit, but I'm like,
No, I feel you.
you know, I was just like. I was like, how do I recreate this? I don't think I can recreate something like this. And it's like, why do I want to recreate this? You know, and again, I just had to look at those whys, and that whole process came from Spotify support just dropping basically altogether.
Things
You
were
know,
out of your control.
yeah, completely out of my control. And at that point, it was just like I shifted how I kind of how I moved in the music industry in general, like how I approached what I wanted to say with my music, when I wanted to say it, how I wanted to put it out. And before it was kind of cut and clear for me. Like it was just like I want to make people think. I want to make people you know, like and I still want to make people think with my music, but before it was very 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 direct. I want to make the lyrics the forefront of music. Like I want pop music to be very lyric central and people to think about what they're hearing, and not for it to be so you know, subconscious, just happy music, right? There's nothing wrong with being happy, but it was just like I want the forefront to be something of consciousness, right? And that was what pushed me forward. But from that point, it no longer became because I had to detach myself from my self worth to what I put out. It no longer became about what other people or how I could make other people feel about it. It just became about I just want to make this. Like I just want to create. Like this just came out of me. I don't really care what it's saying. I just want to make it because the creation is valuable in and of itself. Just the fact that I was able to create it. So
Yeah, I thought that was so interesting, man, because I think we kind of have those moments. I feel like wherever anyone is at in their creative process, they'll have something that sticks with them. Like they'll have one thing that they made that they kind of like, they'll go into open a new session and try to like recreate the magic to some extent using different sounds. Like I feel very guilty of that. So I feel like when I read that stream of thought from you, I understood it in a very relatable way, and I feel like I know a lot of other people did too, whatever part of their journey they're on. But talk about kind of like the recovery, like how you went from being kind of, I guess, your identity attached to that record to some extent, and kind of what you did after to kind of that bounce back.
I would say the biggest thing that I had to separate myself was this desire to be noticed by Monty, right? Like not our friend. Well, he is a friend, but not, you know, the Monty Booker that I collaborated with. Like for me, he'd already noticed because I was just doing my thing. Like he sent me a message over Twitter. He was just like, "Hey, let's work." I was like, "Okay, great." But the biggest thing that I had I had difficulty dealing with is Monty is usually just in his own headspace 99% of the time. Like he will go my messages will go unanswered for days, weeks, months, like, or we'll make plans and things just go like I literally flew out to Chicago and months in advance I was like, "Hey, is this still good? Are we still good?" Like weeks in advance, "Are we still good?" Cool. I get there and it's like, "Oh, bro, you know, like I gotta my fault." Like it was a change and I'm like stuck in Chicago. So I was like, I had to, you know, I was like, that's extraordinarily frustrating. But the thing that was coming from me is that I was placing an expectation on what that relationship should be, you know what I mean, or could be. And I was like, and I was getting more frustrated that it wasn't what I thought it was, right? And it's not to say like, oh, I have no ill will against Monty at all. Like, I was just like, okay, I have to connect with him where he's at and where his headspace is, and with everybody, it wasn't just Monty, but specifically because I'd made such this effectful thing that he considered trash, right? He was like, "This is a trash beat," right? Like, here's whatever, and I was able to make, quote unquote gold with it. There was such a strong tie to it for me that I was just like, I want you to see that this is gold. Like, I want you to realize that this is powerful. I want you to see, and I'm not, whether however he feels about it is however he feels about it, but for me it was like I really just wanted him to notice that what he does is so impactful that even his trash is gold to me, right? And so I don't know if that message ever got through to him or not. Personally, I'm already kind of past needing that, but or wanting that. But it was really really critical for me to kind of decouple myself from that desire to get him to see it or notice that worth and be like, notice this is how special this is. I'm like, whatever it's going to be to him is whatever it's going to be to him, right? I can't control what he's going to feel about it, if he hates it or if he loves it. Like, that's him, right? So for me, I was just like, I have to focus on the feeling that it had for me and the worth that it had for me. And for me, it was just a good time. It was a song that represented me at one of my happiest points. So I had to remember that worth for myself and remember that that's all that really mattered. This is an expression of me being happy.
That's
And
that's man. I resonate with that a lot. I think uh, there in the spirit of collaboration, I think we have certain expectations that come with, uh, if your producer is sending, beats to an artist, it just simply might not be the right time. And you also, like, dealing with people on the internet, you really don't know who they are unless, like, you meet them in person too. And that's been like a pretty recent revelation for me too, because there is a huge flip, and like I was so dead centered into like trying to send beats to this artist or this person and feeling like that was gonna be the value for me, is like collaborating with them, like on just creating one song with them would make me happy, like chasing that mentality. And that kind of, in the past year and a half, 2 years, has completely 180'd, and I've been so much happier with just kind of essentially just doing me,
right,
like,
right.
and that's like one of the corniest terms of all time, but it's a very, very, when you experience that term in effect, it's a powerful thing. And it also, like, alleviates, there's a lot of things that are out of our control, like it might not be the right time to work with the person, they might do shitty business, they might be like this or that, but I let myself down just purely, with my mentality on like sending this song to this person and working with this person is gonna make me happy, or it's gonna make me a better artist, or it's gonna do this for me or that. And yeah, it is interesting too, because a lot of the people that are amazing to work with are usually within arm's reach and
Right.
have been trying to work with you, or like you kind of overlook because you think this name is, there's an attachment to these certain names, and all they are like screen names essentially, and they're not actual people. Yeah, that's really interesting, man. I mean, also, like, when it comes to the service industry, again, like, this is another instance where the patients, like, flying out to Chicago and being ghosted,
Right.
that's like where these moments come into play, where it's like, if you didn't have that experience, you could say some wild shit and be
Yeah.
like, make things worse. But I feel like we all have to kind of go through these like learnings, and
Mm-hmm.
it's important. It's important shit.
It really is.
Yeah.
It truly is.
Um,
But yeah.
that's really interesting, man. I feel like, yeah, again, known you for however long and still learning new shit about you, um, which is amazing. I want to kind of want to switch up the direction here. I want you also. So we kind of touched on in the beginning, but you made a huge life move,
Yeah.
very recently, this last year.
Yes.
Yeah, tell the people about that, because to me it's like one of the ballsiest things. You have some stones on you for what you did, because you went from you know you went from safety and comfort and what you know to the unknown, essentially.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, so I earlier this year moved to Korea, just completely, like just literally just left the country. Like legally, mind you, like, but I completely packed up my house, like 100%. Had the moving company come in, shipped my stuff on a boat, and moved to Korea. And it's been 6 months since that point. So I'm still sorting out visa situation stuff because it's still not 100% set in stone. But I'm here. I am here, which is it's a blessing to be. I being over here is something that I wanted to do in my life eventually. But it's crazy how everything changed when COVID. Obviously, everything changed when COVID happened. But even much like so much more so. Like I initially planned to move with Monty. Actually, we both planned to move to Toronto, but then when COVID happened, they shut the borders to U.S. citizens, and they're still having issues, keeping it open or closing it. Like so, that my plan A, just got shot. I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do, And I was looking at initially, I was looking at like L.A. or New York before that, but New York expensive as hell,
Mm-hmm.
L.A. expensive as hell, and so there's
South
an interesting.
Korea,
There's
not so expensive.
not so expensive, but it's funny because
What is it?
L.A.
What's
has
rent? What's rent out there, like on average? I'm curious.
well, they have a unique system. So they have what they call 월세, which is basically like renting, and then they have tonse, which is basically like a mortgage, right? And but they're both rental systems. You don't own anything in either case, right? But the reason why I'm saying that is because with Worse, or in general with their systems, it's always been stupidly expensive on the deposit side, right? They've always put up a far higher deposit, and you have a lower rent as a result. So I mean, a normal deposit for a place over here is like 5K, 10K, 20K, right? And so but then I stopped and like, why is that? I was like, and if I think about it culturally over here, most people will live with their families until they're like 30, or in their 30s, or later, until they're either married or have a guaranteed spot. Like they don't leave the house at the same rate that we do in the States or in other places. So they have time to literally just save and work and do whatever because they're being supported by their parents for that long, and happily, because the family kind of supports each other in that way. Like you will genuinely not see, like you'll see 28-year-olds, 35-year-olds still living at home, and that's normal because they're supporting the family and this family is supporting them, and they don't move out until they're absolutely ready to move out. So as a result, the deposit rates for apartments and things like that can be much higher because you have people with dispensable income living at home, no rent, just saving up money.
Got
So,
it.
but coming
I
into
have a
that from the
question though,
States.
like really kind of a side question. How do you, like, say you're single, like you're a single guy or a single girl, how do you bring, like, say you're romantic, like how do you take someone back to your house, or do you go to a park, or do you go to a car, or like is there
So
a cultural thing there? Yeah.
the other cultural thing here is that they have a concept of love hotels, which is basically just like hourly rate hotels or motels just for sex.
Wow. But
You
it's
know,
like
or
it's like
just spending
commonly
time.
known, or it's like is
Oh
it
no,
like a
it's
scandalous
factual.
thing?
Like
Okay.
it's pretty standard. I mean, you'll have every kind of human. You'll have people who are having affairs. You have people who just want to have spend time together. It's a whole spectrum. But it's a very very rampant and like regularly known industry out here, both in Korea and especially in Japan. But you know, because they know that they live at home, you know, it's just kind of common sense. Like, if we want to spend time together, let's go grab an hourly hotel.
That's
you
a
know,
market. There's a market. Yeah.
there's 100% market.
Yeah.
It's
Wow.
100%. It is bolstered by the cultural differences here.
Wow.
So yeah, there's just have hourly hotels. You can literally rent a spot for an hour, 2 hours, do your thing, and dip out, go back home.
Yeah. What's the what's the kind of like, is it looked at, because I feel like if there's something here like that in the States, it would be kind of looked at in a similar light as like prostitution, but it's not
again,
there?
it can be because there's every which kind of sort of person that partakes in that space, right? So it's in the same way that there are like karaoke rooms. They call it norebang is what they're called here, but norebang typically also have like secret signals in their signage. So if they have like the full English or Korean characters, but then they replace one of the last characters with like a heart on the sign, like that's a low key sign to say like this is a place where you can meet mature other people and have affairs. Like it's a very very unique subculture of things here. So and you just learn those things over time. But there are many places that have better reputations than some, and there are places that have like legit like they're really nice like hourly hotels, and they kind of market themselves as just that, like hourly hotels, instead of what Japan calls them love motels or love hotels. But like here you have like hourly hotels, which are meant to relax, unwind, do things. But there are many things like that. Also, PC cafes, so like computer internet cafes where you just have like stacks and stacks of desktop computers that have like all the specced out things, and you could rent it out for a whole day, or you could rent it out for an hour for like $1. You could stay there all day. You could stay there overnight, and they have food. They have like rooms that you can stay in, and you just continually be living, quote unquote, living in the PC cafe. Like there are a lot of accommodations for how the differences in lifestyle are here. Like it's very interesting. So there's a little something for everybody. So it's some people will look at certain spots and be like, that's a shady spot. Like that's where a lot of illicit things going on. But then there's some spots that are like, this is, y'all want to have a good time, go over there.
The Apple Store.
Safe. You're right.
I'm wondering too, because I remember when you first got there, you had to quarantine for 2 weeks in a motel by yourself.
Yep. So actually, yes, I had to quarantine for 2 weeks. But it was they just basically took over a regular hotel, and just government commandeered. So they were just kind of stationed out within the hotel and just outfitted it for quarantining. But it was a regular hotel. So yeah, they had me in there for 2 weeks, and it was mandatory if you're coming on a short-term visa to be in one of the hotels, right? You couldn't just unless you were a spouse or again a relative in the country that was Korean, then you would have to undergo the 2-week quarantine in their facility. So since I was coming by myself and we're not married yet, I was like, well, because I gotta go there. So went there, and honestly, I know a lot of people, like for me, I responded to all the quarantine stuff very differently, but genuinely, all the quarantines I've been in have been some of the most peaceful times of my life.
I bet. I can imagine. Like a lot of time to yourself, and especially for someone like you, who probably enjoys that.
Yeah. I thoroughly enjoy myself. I truly do. I love being in my own company. And that is a rarity for many people, especially people who don't like to think about themselves or look at themselves. But I am fortunate enough to have looked at myself for a long time and saying, yeah, no, I'm cool with this.
I bet you sick bastard. No, and then you got out and you did the whole slow-mo run to your girl, and then you guys hugged and
it was a whole thing. It was a whole moment.
Went straight to the Apple Store motel.
In our case, it was the Airbnb, but same effect.
Well, I'm curious too, like coming in to a new country, you're obviously you weren't fluent in the language, and
Right.
you're currently going to school.
Yes, which will be ending soon because the school has taken over too much priority in this space. Like too much. Like I
Really?
can't. I it is just not conducive to me doing anything other than school.
Damn, it's beating your
It's
ass
like
like that. I didn't know
it
that.
really is. It is truly one of the most stressful things in my life right now. Not because of the language. I mean, learning any language is going to be somewhat stressful, but
Mm-hmm.
outside of that, I just the rate at which they're expecting us to learn, not leaving time for retention, and the amount of work required for the visa sake and for the curriculum sake, it takes up all of my time. I spend 4 days or 4 hours a week. I'm sorry, 4 hours a day every week in school, and then outside of school, there's another additional 4 hours of study. Right, so it's basically full time while only being quote unquote half time, but it doesn't leave me time to do anything, and I can't legally work in the country on this visa, so I have to only study. I can't even make money legally on this visa, right? In this country, at least, I can make money outside of the country, but not here. But of course, it's a lot harder to make money outside of the country if you don't have royalties or passive income streams, remote income streams set up,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately, we have some of that with music,
Yeah.
but if I didn't, I would be entirely screwed because I couldn't make money here,
Wow.
right? So it's
Again, that's
the information presented is extraordinarily valuable, but the process in which I've obtained it is not the move.
right, right, right. And so you're I mean, again, man, like when I think about that move, it's like fucking ballsy, dude. And I mean that in the best way, because I also think that I we have a couple mutual South Korean artist friends, which I want to speak about, just in terms of like the music scene there. But like,
Hmm.
I do kind of feel for you, like, and I don't know, this could be naive, but like, similar to how Erie, you were kind of a big fish in a small pond, and you could like knock on the door and be like, "Hey, I drum." Like here, I I know I'm not I don't want to sound ignorant, but like I I just feel like you get in the right kind of situations in a place like that, and folks see the gravity of your creativity and your abilities. I think it's a similar situation. Like we all kind of know in the States, we hear of music coming from that region that is killing it globally. Um, yeah, I just have a lot of faith, and I when I say that's ballsy, I mean that in like in a very very like a high reward way, like, yeah, because I think you get in the right situation there,
Definitely.
like with someone at your level, and it just take, yeah, I guess I think that it's gonna take maybe a little bit of time, and I feel like this is one of those ebbs that you could be currently facing.
Yep. Yep.
Mhm.
Precisely. It's definitely
Mhm.
going to take a lot more time than initially suspected. Reason being, the way that Koreans relate to foreigners, at least in my experience and in others' experiences that I've read or watched or they've talked about, um, the not the Korean English barrier is one thing, but the foreigner Korean barrier I think is stronger than the Korean English barrier. And because there's such a strong impetus on being part of society as a Korean or going through the woes of a Korean as a Korean, and if you haven't gone through those things, then you're immediately an outsider. Even if you look Korean, even if you're Korean American, right, you're still a foreigner in that regard, and that kind of isolates you from a lot of opportunity as a foreigner because many Koreans are busy, way busier, but also less keen on developing relationships with foreigners for various reasons. But some of those reasons may include feeling like they can't really relate on a cultural level, or or that they won't really understand who they are, or that they don't want to. The older generation for sure is definitely not as keen. There are many older people that are just like, it's cool. But the older generation has a lot more people that are like, foreigners, But, as pretty much any country. But, in the space of trying to work with people who are younger, and in music, it's actually really, really frustrating right now, because a lot of how I'm supposed to communicate or trying to reach out is hindered by not just the Korean English barrier, because I'll reach out in Korean. I'll be like, hey, that's why I'm learning it. But the fact that Korea still operates very much on a clout coin system, as I call it, it's very, very difficult to reach over those several layers. Right, you have the clout, you have the foreigner, you have the English barrier sometimes, and it's at the end result is that you have a lot of ignored text, or just unread text, or calls, or people get delayed, or people just think, this person's not as important, or they're not as poppin', so I'm just not gonna respond, right? And it can be very surfacey, like it can be very, very surfacey. Very LA. Korea can be very surfacey LA, like outsider LA. Because obviously in LA, it's funny. There's several camps, but in LA, you're like, when people say, like LA is trash, or like I don't like personally, I don't want to live in LA because I've tried to, and for me, it didn't really make sense as far as the cost and the people that I work with. I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful city outside of it, but I like inside the city, there was no real benefit except for meeting with music people. But if I'm trying to weed through music people, and 70% of them are flaky or clout coin based, it's like, why would I live in a space that's more expensive when I could just figure out this weeding process from somebody that's somewhere that's like 10 times as cheap? Like, I can just, if they can't answer a text, right, that kind of lets you know how it's gonna be working with them. It's like, okay, cool. I don't need to live in a place where I'm struggling to make rent to figure that out, But outside of LA, obviously there are genuine people there. So I don't necessarily feel like LA is like all fake. I feel like the people that you end up working with, or often end up inadvertently surrounding yourself with, can be fake if you're not careful. But, if you're looking for genuine people, you'll find it eventually. It just takes a bit, because there's a lot of fake people in LA that came from outside of LA, some of them from inside LA, but is a lot of fake to weed through. There's a lot of flake to weed through.
That's everywhere. That's in Texas. That's everywhere. But
that's pretty much everywhere.
It is a hub. It is like a hub. You're gonna have like a lot more artists there, a lot more people.
Right. And it is a hub. That's the thing. It's a very small world here, and it kind of makes sense as to why the clout coin system exists here, is because it's so small that if one person knows somebody, they're guaranteed to know like 10 other people that you already know. So if I know one celebrity or one influential person here, and somebody sees that, they're already keen on working, because they know that I know this one person, and that one person knows like 10 people. It's all very interconnected here, and that could be a blessing and definitely a curse. If you do something to piss one person off, that could essentially end your career if you're not careful with who you piss off. Because it's very small
out there too. Ram is out there. Is that
yeah. He's out here now. He's just coming back from the UK because he had to switch his visa. And that's the thing. It's like the visa situation for me is the most stressful element. Actually being here is not the stressful part, right? Like figuring out how to make rent, that's going to pretty much happen anywhere. That's just normal stress. But getting a visa and trying to survive and trying to function as a citizen without a visa in any country is one of the most stressful things in your life. Like, I commend immigrants that much more. I already was like, wow, but like as an immigrant now, I'm like this is the most stressful thing in my life, right? Just trying to be treated and be able to operate as a functional citizen like everybody else here is a task. being able to have the language, being able to have the ability to work, being able to have insurance, right? Being able to have a phone. Like here, you cannot sign up for a phone plan unless you have a residency card.
Whoa,
Right?
crazy.
Like you cannot sign up for a phone. You can get a prepaid phone, but those you can't sign up for certain services. You can't get a bank account. You can't get internet. Right? There are basic services here that are dependent on you being a citizen. Right? So imagine if in the U.S. You couldn't get an internet plan if you weren't a citizen, right? Or you couldn't get a phone if you weren't a citizen. That would change. That would alter how you function. You know what I mean? Dramatically. And because of that, it's been such a journey getting to where I am now, just because of the citizenship tip. Right? It's a battle just trying to be a productive member of society at present because of the visa situation. But
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, no! Once you're in that place, things kind of start falling in line pretty quickly, right? Like once you have the phone, once you have the internet, once you have the residency, it's a lot easier to just function as an adult, right? But still figuring out how to be able to make money here without legally being able to make money here is obviously the challenge. That's why I'm trying to switch the visa, and we're going forward. We're trying to go forward with a different kind of visa outside of the student one because it just doesn't make any sense for what I need to do. Like I tried to get a music visa, but the music visa in and of itself is dependent on 3 Korean artists or bands or labels writing me a letter of recommendation. And if it's that hard to get somebody to text me, within a week, how am I going to get them to write me a letter is beyond me, So trying to get something that is that dependent on somebody else is very unlikely to succeed unless you have, those clout coins. So, I'm like, all right, what is I'm trying to find the right visa that is the most feasible through my own means and my own efforts rather than depending on anybody else. So that is the hope.
Best of luck to you. I could forge a letter for you. And then you could translate it. I'll say some good things, but
hey, I appreciate you.
Yeah, man. If you want to risk it. It sounds like you're in hustle mode. I'm
very much in hustle mode.
Yeah,
extraordinarily in hustle mode. And it's between hustle and study mode. Like I'm quite literally a student and a musician, and somehow supposed to figure out be able to maintain the responsibilities of both. Normally when you're studying, you have a family to depend on, or you have a place to live or things like that. But if I can't support myself, how are
you getting any music done in this time, or are you?
That is a great question. How am I doing? How do I do it? And the question is, I just have to sacrifice certain things at any given point. Either studying has had to be missed, or music has had to be missed at any given point to kind of get further ahead. In order to move into the house, I've had to miss several days of schools and risk losing my visa, right? In order to, make music, I've had to skip several days of school. In order to study and pass well, I've had to stop making music for a minute to get established and to get everything focused. So it's a constant dance of compromises, like this compromisation triangle, and sleep and a social life, So it's definitely hard. It is not an easy thing. I do not recommend anybody do it lightly. Right, especially coming from the States. The unfortunate thing is there are so many other countries that you could do this easier on. Like in the UK, the reason why Ram is able to come here so easily is because they have the H-1 visa. We have it too, but in a different regard. The US, you can only be up to like 21 at max, or 24 or something like that, and be coming off of college to be eligible for the H-1 visa. But in the UK, basically anywhere else, you can be up to 30. And you don't have to be off college. You can just go. So you can just be on a working holiday visa, an H-1 visa. It's just a visa where you can just go and just live and work and do whatever for a year, right? So Ram was able to come here on that. I had to come here through just a student visa means, which means I could only study. I can only do this thing. I can't get a part-time.
So it's like base level kind of.
It's sub-base level. Honestly, I can't do anything to support myself legally in this country, right? Again, money made outside of the country, different story. But here, that's why it's such a challenge coming as a U.S. citizen. So it's not anything that it's like light. I'm just like, come through. Like this shit is hard. It's extraordinarily hard.
What's your so there's like we don't have to get into like numbers, but I mean, it's like, what are the revenue streams for you that are making it work for you? So there's like the streaming. Is there any like freelance stuff or like commission? I know you did a splice pack. Like,
Yeah. So, but
is
yeah,
it
most of those things are just from the state's income. So there's nothing
right?
that I'm doing here that is generating me income because
Sure.
I can't, But music, passive income, freelance odd jobs, mixing, mastering,
Hmm.
all those
Which
kinds of
I
things I
must
can.
say that's also another skill set that a lot of people don't know about you. You're mixing and mastering. Like, I can't stress enough like the versatility, and that's what I'm saying, man. It like you. I'm just so happy for the day you get in the room with the right one, and it's just like, oh, this is what we got. This is the problem because on every level, every facet of production, and every facet of writing, like a problem. You're a problem.
Uh,
A problem.
I
Big
appreciate.
problem.
Someday I will. They will recognize that, But baby steps. I gotta generate more cloud coins first.
There you go. Stake them. Um,
you know.
yeah, man. Well, I appreciate you taking the time, man. I feel like there's a few, like we could literally talk for like 2 more hours.
Mm.
But what's next for you? What's next for you?
Next for me, in the next foreseeable 6 months, is I'm going to be starting Twitch streaming. Well, not just Twitch, but multicast, so Twitch and YouTube. Because one of the biggest things that I've been trying to do since I started this is build a solid community of weird people who love music and love making it and love memes and love weird shit and being able to just thrive in that and share funny things and do great things and also not starve while doing it. So realizing that actually it was 20 or beginning of 2020. I was applying for a position at Twitch because one of our acquaintances that used to work at Spotify after the calling moved over to Twitch, and they were looking for people for A&R positions for the music department in Twitch, and they were building that up. So back in March 2020, I was privy to information that basically was saying Twitch is getting ready to prioritize music creators on Twitch. Like they're trying to push for that. So I kind of just I applied for that, didn't get the job, but I have been seeing Twitch since that point specifically bolster music creators, and there's such a unique opportunity right now because it's so new and it's so small that you could literally be blowing yourself up like in a good way. Like you could really this is like early days of YouTube, right? Kind of potentiality here, right? I have several friends now who are operating on relatively considerably smaller numbers. Like for example, Monty, right, is at like 20,000 followers, and I don't know how much he makes, but I have another friend who is currently like, if not number one in top 10 of Twitch music streamers, who also has the same amount of followers, but is earning between 90 and 150K a year, right, off of 20,000 people. That is an unfathomable thing to me. Like if I think about that on Instagram, right? I don't know how somebody's flipping 20K followers into 150K a year. Like that's an insane thought. But the fact that that opportunity exists here in the Twitch space, in the live streaming space now, especially as a music creator, that's something that I'm like, okay, this is the time to act. So in this past year, I finally upgraded the 10-year-old Mac that I got handed down. You know what I mean? And I was able to finally purchase my own and get a computer decent enough, not decent, great enough for streaming and producing and doing things and actually being able to have these conversations and hold these streams and build up that community. So I'm really excited to be doing that. I'm actually going to be starting that in the next 2 weeks, and just consistently streaming and seeing what comes of that, because it really is not just about money for me. Like I genuinely have tried to figure out how to build a community for a long time. I have several different spaces and they're all disjointed. YouTube community is different than the Discord, different than the SoundCloud, different than the Instagram, different than the Twitter. I'm like, I want to join these spaces. I want to be able to give people a concise space for us all to kind of just get together and be weird, right? And streaming to multiple platforms at the same time is one way to do that. So I'm really, really excited on building that out. So I've been building that out for the past month, just generating clips and figuring out generating assets and just building up the pages and everything like that to be able to actually do that. So that launches in like 2 weeks. And yeah, I'm so hyped because the for me it's like I get to finally express all of these various talents and facets, and they don't have to be complete ideas. That's the biggest superpower for it for me, right? You can just be twitching or streaming, and just work on a minute long loop. But in the process of that, you've gained however many followers, or people gain such an awareness of what you do that it doesn't matter if you finish that or not. It's they've got to be part of that process, and that process, the creative process, is the thing that I enjoy the most. So having people be part of that with me is it makes me ecstatic, and to be able to do that.
Yeah. Like I want to say though, like every time we have a session, I learn something new, whether that's in Ableton or whether that's like, so I'm genuinely excited because I think people are going to learn a lot from you just by watching. I haven't like tuned in to Twitch proper. I've just seen like clips of Twitch, like from Kenny Beats and stuff, and like some from Monty, and I feel like there's another person that what's his name?
Knowledge, I think Knowledge is.
Oh, I haven't seen his. Oh, yeah, T-Pain too. There's just like a few that I've seen where it's like, oh, you can really like drop, bombs of wisdom there, and I feel like you are a very dense book of wisdom when it comes to certain like DAWs and techniques, and that I haven't seen other people kind of touch on. And like, I guess my point is like, I've seen all of these Twitch streams, and I feel like there's a dope theme happening, and I can feel the bubbling of it, with the community and the interactiveness. But I think that, yeah, yours will be very special, and again, carrying the essence of like your quirkiness and like your kind of not to stroke the ego, but like but your genius too. Like there's it's a perfect platform to showcase that stuff, because yeah, like I said, man, every single session that we've had in person, I've just watched you do a couple things, and I've walked away from these sessions like doing what's it called on Ableton, the punch in thing, right next to the loop. Like I had no idea that existed, and it makes every session more efficient when you're tracking. Yeah, like so little things like that, and like even the mastering side of things, like so much that I've learned in just those handful of sessions that we've had. So I'm excited for the community that you're gonna build, because they're gonna walk away with a lot.
I'm hoping. I mean, the best part and the thing that I'm really excited about is, like, for example, Twitch has, well, both Twitch and YouTube have like affiliate programs or partner programs, right? So you can take advantage of the ad revenue streams. But in either case, usually you have to go exclusive once you're at those points. And I'm in a very, very unique situation where I don't have enough, or for either platform's requirements, to be a partner. So I still have audiences on at least on the YouTube side, and so I'm able to do this multi-stream thing where I'm streaming to both Twitch and YouTube at the same time, because I don't have any deals with them, right? So I can take advantage of my already existing audience and be building a new audience at the same time, instead of being like, oh, I gotta focus on Twitch or I gotta focus on YouTube. No, I'm gonna do both at the same time, so I can bring in the old and introduce some new. And it's so helpful coming, especially if you're starting from zero, right? Like to be able to have like a baked in audience ready to go. Like I was just trying to do some test streams just to test things out, and I accidentally made like one of the streams public a few times, and like every instance at least one person would randomly be like, it'd be like 4 a.m. Somewhere, like, and they'd be like, oh, he's live. And so it really makes me confident, like especially if I didn't post anything and it was a genuine accident and somebody just happened to find out about it, that when I do intentionally go live, that I'm already gonna have an audience ready and waiting to go. Right. So I'm really hype on that because then that just gives it so much more momentum than just me just trying to start from scratch. So
Yeah, there's something really cool about like showcasing the ability to not finish things and like just have things be an idea and that's okay. You know? Like there's something so like real about that you don't get from, you know, you see you have limits on what you can do on all these platforms. Like that's really cool. You're inspiring the shit out of me with that one because there's limitless potential. Like you could dive into kind of whatever direction you want to go, like where you want to go. Yeah, that's really cool. It's like really freeing as a creative person and not feeling like there's like a 1 minute limit, 60-second limit to cram something into. Yeah, that's it's like a stream of consciousness a little bit.
yeah, quite literally, you know,
Yeah.
and that's the best part for me is that there's no pressure at that point to make it be something more than it is, or you know, if I want to, obviously at any time I can go back and finish stuff, or I can finish stuff on stream, but it's an opportunity to just invite people into what actually happens and where I'm most happy at, like into that 80% of the process, like 80% of the work done, right? They like that chunk of work is what happens. And the final 20 is where we finalize, but that 80%
Yeah.
is where everything happens.
Right.
You know?
Do you feel like cuz in my mind like I guess there have to be a way where you have to like kind of have it going and not think about it at a certain point, like cuz I feel like the most fun I have making music is when I'm just fucking around, really. Like I'm not there's no, it never comes from like I don't have a preconceived thought. Like I can't really operate that way or create that way. Like it just has to flow out. So this is a platform in which people can observe that flow.
Yeah.
But do you think that it could alter how you approach the concept from the beginning? And I guess like when you turn the camera off, like do you think you'd still be like, I guess, performing to the stream or to the what are they, Twitchers?
Right. You know, the whatever they're well,
The
I guess you
audience,
gotta
yeah.
make up whatever name you up for. But I don't think so. For me, because I know I've been trying to find the platform that allows me to just be me for so long. I remember when we did the Play Nice streams, that was one of the best things because I was just doing exactly what I would do off camera, but just talking to people instead of talking to myself. So it was, you know, it feels like a very natural next step for me. Like it's something that I already do, and you know, from the commentary that I've gotten on, you know, me doing my quote unquote gibberish takes, like I make ridiculous sounds all the time, and they're great. You know what I mean? And I love bringing people into that because you know if I ever finish one of those things, they were there to see where that came from, where the
Yeah, they were
but
part
they're
of
also
it. Yeah.
you know they're a part of it, and that's such an exciting thing for me because that is the most fun part for me, like the creation part. And the gibberish, usually the gibberish takes for me are the most authentic and most raw because that's exactly the feeling I'm trying to capture when I go and do the rest of the 20%
This
work.
is gonna be crazy. Oh my god! It just kind of hit me. Yeah, it hit me just now. Like, cause is anyone else? Are there other Twitch streamers that are doing vocals too, like you?
That's the thing. I don't know. Maybe T-Pain. T-Pain is the only one I can think of.
Whatever. I mean, God bless
Right.
him. But like, yeah, like in this sphere, I guess.
Yeah. Other than that, I don't know anybody doing it the way that I would do it in particular, which is why I'm like, it's such an exciting opportunity because they can. It's really a space for me to just be like, this is where that comes from, and also this is fire, even if it makes no sense. Like, you know, like I've loved making gibberish songs so much because it's so raw and it doesn't matter what language it's in. It's like when people play The Sims, like they created Simlish, because it's like it doesn't matter what language it's in. You know, the most important thing that people resonate with is the melody, is the top line, is the feeling. You know, so I get to
that's
connect with
usually
people.
yeah. That's usually like the most juicy take is like the take one or two. You know.
Right. So we get to be exploring that in that
Oh
space. So I'm like,
gosh.
yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's exciting, man. Oh my gosh.
No.
Yeah.
And you know, and obviously, like whenever I do collaborations or it could be remote. Obviously, when people come through the studio, then they could just come through into the studio and be streaming at the same time. But
I
you
mean,
know, there's
shoot,
so much possibility with it.
yeah, and that could be a really interesting way. Like we were talking about, like okay, not getting text back from folks that live out there. This could be a really interesting inlet to
Right. You know,
yeah,
we didn't know he was doing it like that. Oh,
right.
now we want to, you know. So for me, it's like, all right, cool. Y'all want to, I'm going to do my thing. Y'all missing out, you know, and the fact that I can build something that they're missing out on. It's not like, haha, I'm doing better. But it's like, I'm grateful that I have the opportunity to actually do something here. You know what I mean? Like that is the biggest thing for me. It's like moving out here. Most people are like operating in kind of like a collaborative mind or writing for somebody else or making beats for somebody else. But I get to be out here and just make for me. And then whoever wants to join can join, but I'm just going to be doing me. And that is the most exciting thing. It's like I finally am finding a space where I can just be me and really just enjoy creating. Like that to me is the ultimate pleasure, is just creating. Whatever it is, that is my highest form of enjoyment. Like just being in that process. And then I get to bring people in on that. So I'm hyped. I'm hyped.
Oh my gosh. Ugh, love it, man. I love it. Love you, bro. Thank you so much for
Absolutely.
for joining and taking the time. I know you got a whole day ahead of you.
Right.
Is what time is it in Korea right now?
It's 1:59 p.m. So it's maybe 2 o'clock.
Nice. Very nice. Oh, well, Naj, super good to talk to you. Yeah, thanks for joining, man. It was a fun
Absolutely.
little conversation. We talk a lot, but it's never this we never go in like this, like at least recently. So it's good
Right.
to learn more about you in this way. So much love to you, man. Thank you.
Likewise. Anytime, you know, we can always just have these chats. But of course, you know, I still have yet to. There's still so much of your history I don't know. So much of Luna's history, Frankie's history I don't know. I'm keen on learning all of that. You know what I mean? It's been a long time.